Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here inside TCO Performance Center, and joining me on the show, Matt Verderame, who is from SI.com, national reporter. And this is about the time where we get the national reporters stopping by to give a little attention to the Vikings. You know, Vikings fans, Matt, they have felt disrespected by the national media. I'm just saying, throughout this year, they have been the cute story of the league. Now, this week, they have to be taken seriously by folks like yourself.
Well, you know, I will defend myself in one regard. I've been trying to do this story for 3 months, and the PR staff's been awesome, and they got it done. But look, you're right though. Like the national media, and obviously I include myself in this. Like I think there's been a lot of focus on for the first half of the year. It was will the Chiefs go undefeated, right? Because all of a sudden they're 8-0, 9-0, and then on the NFC side of the thing, Detroit was so dominant. They beat Minnesota early in the year. And I think there was this thought that, like, well, Detroit is this runaway train and nobody's going to beat them anyway. And then, of course, the injuries catch up and the defense regresses. And then Philadelphia kind of takes center stage because Barkley's trying to go for 2,000 yards. And the Eagles have recently had a lot of success. And then there's Minnesota, who most people did not expect to be anywhere near this good to start the year. And then McCarthy gets hurt. And you're kind of like, okay, it's another year where they're going to kind of slog through it. And we're going to, maybe win 7 games. And I think everybody just kind of was waiting for Darnold to, like, okay, at some point he's going to fall off. And he just never has. I think at this point, if you're not taking him and the Vikings seriously, you're out of your mind. They're 14-2, and he's played at an MVP level. So I think now they're commanding attention in a way that maybe earlier in the year, the Bills got attention, the Chiefs, the Lions, the Eagles. And it was like, yeah, Minnesota, the other 10-2, but it's Darnold. And is that really going to stick? Yeah, it has. It really has.
Well, I think a big part of that, too, is who they played in the middle of the season. So they lost the 2 games in a row, and then it was the AFC South, and they just didn't have a lot of national games, and they also have not been controversial at all. No. When your team is just winning and they get along and your coach is competent and you built the team strong, there's not a lot of what's the tension in the story? What's the debate topic around the Vikings? It's really only been, like you said, will Sam Darnold eventually come apart at some point? And the fact that he's gotten better and better as the season goes along, now that's become a new story. How much are you buying Sam Darnold going into this game, going into the playoffs? But I thought as far as believing him in big games, last week probably went a long way toward that. That was the biggest stage for him, and he passed in flying colors.
Best game he's played in his career. I mean, at least in terms of passing yardage, right? Passing yardage high for his career. And, I sat there like everybody else was watching that game. And really, look, the final score does not indicate what that game was. I mean, Minnesota basically trucked Green Bay for about 55 minutes, and then the game got tight in the end. But I thought, interestingly enough, that game, to me, the most instructive part was the way Minnesota closed the game. They didn't just hand off to Aaron Jones 3 or 4 times and hope that they could get 10 yards. O'Connell was like, look, we're throwing. We're throwing the ball. We're going to put it in your hands. And I thought the throw Darnold made to Jefferson on 2nd down, I mean, that's a ball that a lot of guys do not attempt to make. I mean, because that's a ball, as well as I do, that gets tipped up in the air, hits a guy, all of a sudden it hits a hand, and all of a sudden it deflects to someone. He didn't care. I mean, he gunned that ball in there, and he put it right on. It was a nice catch. It was a great throw. And then, of course, they finished it off with a throw that almost wasn't long enough, but it was a nice catch, and it wins the game. But I think, look, Minnesota, I mean, I'll say it right now, I think they're going to win on Sunday night. I'm picking them to beat Detroit. I don't think Detroit can stop them. I mean, we all watched the Monday night game, and I know it meant nothing for Detroit to get that. They played everybody. They give up 34 points to a Niners team that can't do anything. The Niners are 6-10. Purdy, after the game, said his arm is on fire. And if he doesn't throw a bunch of picks and Moody doesn't miss a bunch of kicks, like, they would have won the game. So I think at this point, Minnesota, why can't they beat Detroit? Why can't they get a 1 seed? I mean, they've proven it, and Darnold certainly has proven it.
Let's go deeper into that then, as far as trying to predict this game. The defensive thing for Detroit, I know that they're banged up and they're injured, but I also feel like they haven't found ways to squeeze as much out of that as maybe they could. I mean, as you mentioned, their only stops are when Brock Purdy throws in the ball. Kirby Joseph is a tremendous ball hawk.
9
he makes
picks.
One great play, but also there's a freebie that was more of an arm punt by Brock Purdy. It really feels like, and we just got done with Kevin O'Connell's press conference. We just listened to him talk about this. It feels like the turnover battle here has to be at center stage because Detroit is not stopping this Vikings offense more or less unless they find a way to take the ball away. And it has been Sam Darnold's Achilles heel in his career of giving the ball away, but not lately. Lately, he has been really, really good at protecting the football.
And I think Darnold, if you even go back to the end of his time in Carolina, he stopped turning the ball over. And then, of course, the Niners barely played. And then this year, I think you correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there was one game with Jacksonville. He had like 3 picks or something, right? Yep. And that was like the game. I remember watching some of that game and thinking, like, is this where the train comes off the tracks? And then he was great after that, and it was fine. If I'm Minnesota, I'm going into this game even more than normal saying, if we come out of this even, we're probably going to win this game because I don't think they can stop us. And even though the Lions are great offensively, and Ben Johnson is so creative, if I'm Brian Flores, I'm going, look, we don't have to stop him every time. We got to make a stop here, a stop there, get off on 1 4th down. And that, to me, is the other part of this. The Lions offensively, they know they're up against it defensively. So if there's a 4th and 5 at their own 45, they're probably going. Campbell's so aggressive, and Ben Johnson's willing to do that. But I do think with Darnold, to your point, like, if I'm saying Darnold, I'm going to this game like every other game this year. Look, I'm going to gun it. I've got great receivers. I've got a quality tight end. I've got the backs. The line is held up even without Darashaw. So if I'm Darnold, I'm sitting there saying, look, I'm not going to change anything. We scored plenty of points the first time we played Detroit. And if they get 1 first down at the end of that game, they win it, right? So if I'm Minnesota and I'm Darnold, if I'm KOC, I'm thinking I'm not changing anything about the way we play. We're good enough to win this game as is, but there will be an extra emphasis on, hey, look, man, if it's 2nd and 8 and you think you might be able to fit it in, but throw it away. Don't worry, we got another down to play with.
Well, especially when you feel like you can succeed over and over against the defense. It's not like the margins are as thin for something like that, for throwing a ball away, for taking a sack, because you can make up for it. What I think is the Vikings have to find a way to stay on the field, though, because one of the things they did extremely well against the Packers was they dominated the time of possession. Now, that's defense, too. They were causing 3 and outs, but they had some long drives, and they had extended drives. Even after Darnold throws the interception, they come back, they have a long drive for a touchdown. And before Jones got hurt, they were running fairly effectively. Yeah. I think that if you can keep Detroit on the sideline and you can extend these drives, that's where it's an advancement of the Vikings offense. Because for a lot of the season, it was, if they're not hitting big, they're probably stalling out a little bit. But against Green Bay, and we've seen this from a few other games, even Chicago a few weeks ago, staying on the field, I think, is sort of the tell of a great offense, is where you can do it a lot of different ways, and not needing the explosives against the Lions might end up being important.
Yeah, if you look at a lot of the teams around the league, right, the best teams in football, Buffalo this year has not been overly explosive. It's been a lot of James Cook and a lot of Allen keeping it alive with his legs, and Shakir. You look at Kansas City. Kansas City's great on offense at times because of their 3rd down percentage. They're not a great offense by any means, but they dominate time possession. They have the best time possession in football. Philadelphia, they run the ball. I mean, sure, they got Brown and Smith, and that's all great and fine, but like, they run the ball. They win on 3rd down. I think for Minnesota in this game, I mean, a lot of that's going to be who's guarding Jefferson in this game. They don't have him. I mean, that if I'm Minnesota, I'm sitting there going, look, anytime we got to have it, slant to Jefferson, in cut to Addison, throw across middle on an option route to Hawk. I mean, those throws are going to be there. Detroit's an aggressive team. They're a man team a lot of times. If I'm the Vikings, I'm sitting there saying, look, as long as we stay on schedule, we're in good shape. We just don't want to be in a spot where it's 3rd and 13 because of a hold, right? And now, even at the disadvantage Detroit is defensively, now it's like, all right, well, look, I mean, most teams are going to find a way to create enough of an issue where you can get off the field. And I think if you're the Vikings, does that lend itself to maybe early downs being a little bit more, hey, we're going to run the ball for 3 or 4 yards. That's fine. We can play at a 2nd and 6. And maybe to your point about explosives, maybe that leads to, hey, now we can take a shot play from midfield because it is constantly 2nd and 5 and 2nd and 6, and we're drawing a guy up. So Minnesota's offense should fare pretty well in this game. Really should.
On the other side of the ball, Detroit's offense is so prolific. I mean, I feel like it's one of the best offenses we've seen in the NFL in a long time. Kind of reminds me, people around here talk about the 98 Vikings offense, and it's different because they were throwing bombs to Moss all the time. Yeah. But it's the same in the fact that there's just weapons everywhere. And if the quarterback does his job, they're going to get tons of yards, a great offensive line, stay on the field forever, as we're talking about, run trick plays like crazy. But something that we almost have never, I don't think I've ever in my life gone into a game saying is going to be a massive key, is one particular down. and that is 4th down. And we know Campbell's going to go for it.
Yep.
I think he's right for going for it because the defense that they have, you have to. You have no other choice. The Vikings have the number 1 4th down defense in the league. Brian Flores talked about it yesterday. I think this game, it's crazy to say, might end up getting determined on how well the Vikings defense can stop some of those ultra aggressive decisions from Dan Campbell.
No question. And also to keep in mind, Detroit runs more fake punts than anybody in football. So, I mean, they're a team that even on a 4th and 8, we'll run a fake punt. And they'll do it from their own 20-yard line. I mean, they are insanely aggressive. I remember watching when they played the Bills a couple of weeks ago. They did an onside kick with 13 minutes left. I mean, they are very aware of the fact they cannot stop people. So they're going to play a different way than you normally would play. And I asked O'Connell in the presser, like, do you look at 4th down stops like takeaways? And he said, yeah, I do. I mean, I asked him that because Tom Brady during the broadcast of the Vikings game last week said that. And so that kind of feeds into what we've been talking about the turnover ratio. Well, if you're looking at it in that regard, if you can get off the field twice on 4th down, those are like turnovers, especially depending upon where they are in the field, right? Like if you stop a team at their own 40-yard line, you're basically in range of a field goal, right? I mean, 1 first down, maybe even half of it, 5-yard field goal range. So I think 4th down is critical. Whenever you play the Lions, you have to expect that. We saw them last year in the NFC title game against the Niners. Could argue it cost them the game. I mean, they were relentlessly going for it. I can't imagine a world in this game where the Lions feel like they should punt. It's gonna be 4th and 10 at their own 18-yard line. Like, I really think if it's 4th and 5 or less, they're not going to punt the ball. Like, I just because they know they can't stop Minnesota with the defense that they have right now.
Right. Even if you have a punt with 40 yards of net, you're probably giving that up pretty quickly to
plays.
Right. And even at full strength, they've never been able to stop Justin Jefferson as a team. And now you have TJ Hawkinson coming back. He didn't even play in the first matchup between these two teams. The Jared Goff factor here, I've really respected Jared Goff and the way that he has total command of this offense. The one thing that's followed him around a little bit is in some of these big games, and it's a nitpick in some ways because he's got such great numbers, so many top 5 offenses during his career, and yet there are times where if he has to make a play out of structure, if he has to do something special like we see Allen do or Lamar do or even Darnold, that's where he's got a little bit of an Achilles heel. How do you think that Flores will attack him? Do you think it'll be the heavy blitz style that he's always done? Does he throw something different? Because remember, his New England Patriots once upon a time beat Jared Goff in a Super Bowl by mixing up coverage that they had not done before. So I'm really curious, what does he have in the bag of tricks against Jared Goff this time?
I remember that was the first Super Bowl I ever covered.
Oh.
And I remember after that game going down to the locker rooms and some of the Rams players saying, like, the Pats hadn't run quarters coverage all year, and that's all they ran in that game. And the Rams just had no idea what to do with it. They could not. And McVay, to his credit, wore a lot of that. It was like we were just totally unprepared for what they were going to do. And in this game, I wonder with Flores, look, I don't think you go away from what you've done. They've been so successful. It's worked, obviously. Hell, it's why I'm here, right? So, I mean, I'm writing a story about the defense. I do wonder in this game, though, if Flores, actually to kind of contradict it, did they lean into what they've been and just say, look, we feel like Amon-Ra St. Brown is phenomenal, and to cover him man-on-man is going to be a challenge. I don't care who you are, any team. Jameson Williams just had a breakout year, but I feel like if you can limit the deep ball with him, you're probably willing to give him those 3-4 catches. Okay, fine. If he was 4 for 60, we'll live with it, right? I wonder if you're Flores, do you try to blitz on the interior, the A and B gaps a lot in this game, and just say, look, if we can get him to have pressure in his face, to your point, he's not Allen. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Mahomes, where he's going to get out of the pocket, and you're almost more nervous when you get out of the pocket, right? Because now the play is broken down and it's out of structure. If you can get Goff to move, the play is oftentimes over. He's not going to run, especially if you can get him scrambling to his left. So I wonder if there's a lot of A-gap blitzes, if they blitz from the right-hand side, from Goff's right-hand side, to force him to the left. And look, I mean, in speaking to Flo yesterday for the piece I'm writing, he said, like, you always want to get home with as few guys as you can possibly live with, right? So if it's 3, it's 3. If it's 4, it's 4. I think early you try to get home with 4. But this is a great offensive line. that you're dealing with. And so you might need to, even if it's just walk some guys up to the line of scrimmage, force the Lions up front to declare, okay, it's one-on-one across the board, then you drop. Sometimes that can be enough. I expect them to try to do some of that early, but if that's not working, bring some blitzes up the middle, bring some blitzes off the right side, and try to force Goff off his spot.
I really like the idea of the middle pressure because go back to when the Vikings beat Drew Brees, and that was a little bit of a weakness of his, of all the greatness that he had. It was a little bit of a weakness. Goff is taller, but it's the same sort of deal where there's no escape route for that guy other than just getting rid of the football. And something that I noticed looking at the numbers from that first game they played, the Vikings did pressure him, and he performed exceptionally well under pressure. But that's not something that happens week to week with him. Over his career, he's not one of the better quarterbacks in the league under pressure. So do you want to change a lot or figure, is he really going to have that many successful throws under pressure like he did last time? Can he really repeat that the way that he did at US Bank Stadium?
I also think, too, another factor in this, if you're Flores, is you've got to factor in how you think your offense is going to play. You know, if you're playing a game and you think you're going to score 20 points, you might play a lot differently and go, all right, you know what? Let's play a little bit more of a red zone game here. Let's try to hold them in the red. Let's play a little bit of that bend but don't break, right? If you think you're going to score 35 points, you might be a little more willing to go, look, let's take some chances. Because if we can get a turnover or two, we're going to win the game. Like if I'm Flores in this game, my entire mindset is take the ball away from him twice. Right. That's my whole goal in this game. And you can include fourth down in that. That's fine. But if I'm Flo, I'm sitting in the room telling Stephon Gilmore, look, man, if you think you can jump a route, go for it. If you're Van Ginkel, you think you can get that strip sack, go for it. And I'm willing to take the chance because I feel like the offense is going to score a lot of points. Whereas if I'm in a game against a team with a great defense, I might be looking at that a little differently and going, all right, you know what, we can't afford to miss a shot there because then all of a sudden 7 points means a lot more in a 23-20 game than it does a 35-31 game. So I think if you're Flores, you've got to factor all that in. And in this game where you expect a lot of points, got the highest over-under total of the week, one of the highest of the year, I think you do maybe take that extra chance because, okay, we'll get it back if we don't hit on it.
So the question of the week on the show for every guest is how important is this game to the winner? I've been asking everybody, what's the difference in percentage of chance of going to the Super Bowl between winning and losing this game? Well, let's just assume both teams are equal, so this applies to either team.
Yep.
But what is the percentage gap, do you think, the winner versus the loser?
I think if Minnesota wins this game, look, so let's walk it back. Whoever wins, obviously, number one seed. If Minnesota wins, there's a very good chance you're seeing this game in 2 weeks, right? Because Detroit will be the 5, and they're going to play. It sounds like the Rams, just based on the Rams aren't going to play anybody, and obviously the Buccaneers have to clinch the division. I think the Lions would probably go in and beat the Rams because I don't know that the Rams can stop them, right? So, okay. And by the way, I'd feel the same way. Even though Minnesota lost to the Rams earlier this year, I think they're better. I think they would beat the Rams. So I think either way you're seeing this game again, but like where would you rather see it, right? If you're a Vikings fan, you'd sure as hell rather see it in Minnesota, right? You'd rather see it at home. And then I think you're probably going to get Philly in the NFC title game. I mean, not guaranteed. I think it's a massive advantage whoever wins this game. First of all, forget even home field for a second, although I think that matters. You get a week off. It's so critical. I mean, when was the Vikings bye week? It was earlier in the year, was it not?
Week 5, 6,
right.
6.
It was really early.
A long time ago, yeah.
That's a huge deal. I mean, I guarantee you, if you lined up those players and said, what matters more to you, being at home or getting a week off, to pick the week off. Plus, the bye in a playoff, it's like a playoff win. You're advanced. You don't have to worry about it, you know? You don't have to sit. And if you're not the 5, obviously, not only do you get the week off, but you don't have to sit there and now you got to go on the road, maybe go cross country, play the Rams. Like, it changes things. I think if Minnesota is the number 1 seed, to me, they're the favorite to go to the Super Bowl. Could they lose to Detroit or Philly? Sure. Just like Detroit could lose to Minnesota or Philly could lose either one of them. But it's just like I look in the AFC. Is Kansas City the favorite over Buffalo or Baltimore? Yeah, probably. They got one last game. They're at home. They probably are. If you're the number 1 seed, to me, you're the favorite. You are. I'd pick Minnesota. I'd pick them to get to the Super Bowl. If they're at home in those games and get the week off, yeah. I mean, why wouldn't they be at 15-2 with the performance they've had this season?
Okay, last question. Because you've already said who you think's going to win the game. That's usually the last question for all podcasters. So you've already said.
I've got it. Yep.
How about this? Is coach of the year on the line in this game, do you think? Or is it locked in that it's O'Connell?
I don't think Campbell's going to win it either way because the expectations were that they'd be really good. I think O'Connell either way should be. If they win, it definitely is. Because really, my God, I mean, who is more deserving than O'Connell? I mean, you know, you look at the AFC, all the teams that are really good, you expect it to be really good. I don't think you'd give it to any of those guys. I mean, Dan Quinn, he's in the mix for sure, right? He deservedly is in the mix. But for me, yeah, it's O'Connell. But if they win this game for sure, it's definitely Kevin O'Connell if they win the game.
Mm-hmm. All right. Matt Verderame, you can follow him on Twitter if you could figure out how to spell that. Probably si.com might be the easier place to find it. Then you can see the spelling and then find it on social media. No, you do a lot of Chief stuff as well, which I think will probably be relevant in the playoffs that people can go find. Great to see you out here. We've run into each other a bunch of times. I wanted to have you on the show. Glad we could get together as a couple of guys who went to D3 schools in New York. So thanks, man, for the time, and enjoy this game.
I can't wait for it. Thanks a lot.